everything seems to be pretty quiet back inland in Seminyak. Where is everybody? Well, they're all on the beach now. What's led to the sudden change and redistribution of visitors in Bali? A really interesting innovation has happened. A very simple infrastructure project has changed the balance of where I think the future of Bali tourism is going to be. Are you ready to see it? Last episode of the Rise and Fall of Seminyak, we began right here on Jalan Dewi Sri to determine whether or not there was a peak season, to highlight the strategic importance of this as a transportation and communication hub. All right, we're on the beach now. Where is everybody? Well, they're all on the beach now. They're over on that beach going towards Canggu for about 3 kilometers, and they're over on this side of the beach going towards KuDeTa for another 4 or 5 kilometers. Now, what's led to the sudden change and redistribution of visitors in Bali from inland to the beach? Well, a really interesting innovation has happened, unbeknownst to a lot of people who might not have made a recent trip to Bali. More important than any infrastructure project like LRT or the mythical Bali North Airport, this very simple innovation, very simple infrastructure project has changed the balance of where I think the future of Bali tourism is going to be. Are you ready to see it? It's this sidewalk. So before, if you wanted to move between KuDeTa and Seminyak to Canggu, you would have to walk. You'd have to walk in the sand like this. And anybody can tell you walking on the sand for kilometers at a time is not exactly the most comfortable way to travel long distances. But recently, they put in this promenade. And this promenade makes it far easier to walk. In fact, this promenade has a gravitational effect. What do I mean by that? Well, before people would just go to the beach, but then they would move inland to have lunch, dinner, go clubbing, do something else. But nowadays, people just stay on the beach. As soon as somebody arrives to the beach, you can find whatever you're looking for the next segment of your Bali holiday, probably just down that way or up that way. Why go inland anymore? Why go out back to the traffic, to the congestion, to the pollution, when you can just spend the whole day on the beach and find what you need? So this simple little innovation has drastically transformed the distribution of where guests spend their time, and also has transformed whether or not it makes sense to add a spa or a restaurant or any other additional feature to your investment property, because, well, can it compete with spending the day on the beach? And so that's a decision you're going to have to make on your own. So, based on what I just said, guest experience design is a critical component of what leads to high return on investment. Design is your capital. It is what makes your guest experience all the more worthwhile, and you can distinguish yourself competitively by choosing good design. As a property investor, as a hotel, villa, apartment owner, what design should you choose? Well, in order to truly get a deep, strong understanding of design, it makes sense to actually look back in history. And I'm at a pivotal point where design suddenly flipped from the modern minimalist aesthetic to a bohemian, hipster, post-consumer aesthetic. Places like La Plancha, La Favela, Potato Head shifted the design narrative in Seminyak and brought a whole new wave of experiences for tourists who are looking for something different. As we look back in history at how design has evolved in different epochs in Bali, and try to guess at where the design is headed to the future. KuDeTa. Why am I even stopping here? So KuDeTa represents a very important phenomenon that happens over and over again in the Bali real estate market, which is it becomes an iconic destination. It becomes almost like a magnet that really anchors the tourism and the travel into a region. During the heyday in the early 2000s, that this beach club right here, KuDeTa, was the primary centerpiece, fashionable real estate conversation. So the way that it works in Bali is a lot of real estate is not purchased based on logic or data or any sort of analysis. It's actually done kind of the opposite. And let's go over to show you the Oberoi story, Oberoi Hotel. That was literally, KuDeTa was just basically like 30 meters back there. So Jalan Oberoi was pioneered by the Oberoi Hotel, which built the first high-quality luxury 5-star hotel in this section. Because they built this hotel here, guests would once again come all the way through the rice paddies, through the bypass diversion to stay at this hotel. And they had pretty big names staying here. I can't remember, but here's a list of them. from recent memory. What developed here in Seminyak was a really tight-knit community. So the community would literally spend a few days here at the hotel, then they would go shopping down this street, Jalan Oberoi, which is now properly identified as being originated from the Oberoi Hotel. So the guests coming to stay here were the early pioneers and believers in Seminyak. But then what happened later in the 2000s was that KuDeTa brought even more. It brought a whole wave of young, trendy, sexy, Great Gatsby environment every night. Every night at KuDeTa was another wine, dine, expensive cocktail, champagne. It was very lavish, probably what Savaya is today. A lot of wealthy people who had disposable income would go to KuDeTa in the evening, and then during the daytime they would spend their days wandering up and down the boutiques and shopping around for real estate. Inevitably, they would walk into a real estate company that had already seated salespeople at KuDeTa who were buying drinks and being very friendly to gather an audience. They would actually meet the real estate agents and developers that were transforming Seminyak from a rice paddy to what you see now is it's a village of villas, yeah? Of how KuDeTa eventually pioneered the expansion and the development of Seminyak. Now, there's a few important names I think that should be referenced. Saxon Looker was a catalyst. That's the word. He was a catalyst that really pushed forward the expansion of Seminyak. With the Sentosa project, the grand opening was the most amazing party I'd ever been to. It was just divine. They had the best music, free flow drinks, canopies. You felt like a billionaire being at Sentosa. It was because they had fully finished and completed and sold all their units, and they needed to really drum up the momentum to get the guests to start coming in. So they were inviting real estate agents, the media, all the different parties that would excite and bring guests to later stay at the Sentosa. Later on, there was another story. This one's a little bit more of a darker story. There was a gentleman named Hano. Hano started C151. And from the looks of it, C151 was a highly controversial topic because they basically did state-of-the-art technology using motorized doors and all this high-tech gadgets to really technology transform the home. But the problem was that they didn't have the supply chain to actually maintain, continue services on it. Because in Bali, there's a lot of people who know how to use a mechanical way to fix a broken curtain, but there's not a lot of people who know how to change the micro motors on automatic curtains. So C151 turned out to be a wrong direction, especially in that time period. What happened later on is Hano fell into some bad deals. The last I heard, he's kind of a criminal now. He's wanted by the Indonesian authorities. But such a fate actually befell many a developer and many entrepreneur in Bali. And I understand why that happens, because the development cycle works like this. As you start developing, you taste success. So you invest some of your profits from your last project to your next project. Eventually you hit a point in which the timing that made it perfect for you to sell real estate has passed, but that's also when you've actually leveraged up and have your biggest project, and then you face what a lot of real estate developers right now face, which is you face catastrophic loss. You are now at the highest stage of investment, but at the worst moment in the market timing, and it all came down to a collapse. And I think Hano and a few other Neils from Tropical Homes all fell into this really unfortunate consequence of growing too large and then busting at the very end, and then having to run away from Indonesia, restart their name elsewhere. That's a short history of what happens in Seminyak through the developer real estate community that gains momentum in the flywheel and drives the real estate economy. Now, these days, KuDeTa seen better times. As you can see, it's not super busy. And I'll tell you why in the next episode.